George Foreman. George Foreman changed his fighting style more dramatically than almost any heavyweight boxing champion. In the early 1970s, he fought like a wrecking ball, marching forward and throwing heavy hooks and uppercuts until opponents collapsed under the pressure. When he challenged Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship in January 1973, Foreman knocked him down 6 times in 2 rounds to win the title. Against Ken Norton, he used the same approach, forcing exchanges and stopping him in 2 rounds. The young Foreman relied almost entirely on power and aggression. He pushed forward, threw wide punches, and expected the fight to end before the later rounds. That style ran into a problem when he defended the title against Muhammad Ali in October 1974. Instead of retreating, Ali leaned against the ropes and allowed Foreman to continue attacking. Round after round, Foreman threw heavy punches while Ali absorbed them on his arms and gloves. The pace slowly drained the champion's energy. By the 8th round, Foreman was exhausted, and Ali stepped forward with a combination that knocked him out. The defeat exposed the weakness in Foreman's style. His offense depended on overwhelming opponents early, and when the knockout did not come quickly, he struggled to control the fight in the later rounds. When Foreman returned to boxing in 1987 after a 10-year retirement, he fought in a very different way. This version of him fought at a slower pace with a steady jab and shorter punches. Instead of chasing knockouts with combinations, he controlled distance and waited to land a single right hand. Defensively, he often used a cross guard, holding both gloves high in front of his face and chest to block punches while walking forward. He used this approach on November 5, 1994, when he challenged Michael Moorer for the heavyweight championship. Muhammad Ali. In the 1960s, Ali moved around the ring in a way that looked unusual for a heavyweight. He stayed light on his feet, circled the ring behind a fast jab, and relied on reflexes to avoid punches rather than blocking them. Opponents were forced to chase him while he landed quick combinations and moved away before they could respond. The style was on display when Ali challenged Sonny Liston for the heavyweight championship in February 1964. Ali controlled the fight with his speed and movement, stepping out of range while landing jabs and counters. A similar performance followed against Floyd Patterson, where Ali's mobility created problems that larger heavyweights couldn't keep up with. His approach depended on speed and endurance, but after his suspension from boxing between 1967 and 1970, maintaining that speed became difficult. Ali took on a new style in March 1971, when Ali fought Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship at Madison Square Garden. Instead of constantly circling the ring, Ali spent more time along the ropes and in close exchanges as Frazier pressured forward. Over 15 rounds, Frazier repeatedly closed the distance and forced Ali to fight at a slower pace. In the final round, Frazier knocked Ali down with a left hook and won a decision. In the years that followed, Ali changed how he fought. Rather than moving constantly around the ring, he began conserving energy and fighting in shorter bursts. One of the tactics he used became known as the rope-a-dope, where Ali leaned back against the ropes, blocked punches with his arms and gloves, and waited for opponents to tire before countering. The tactic became most famous in his 1974 championship fight against George Foreman in Zaire. For several rounds, Foreman threw heavy punches, while Ali absorbed them on the ropes and waited for openings. By the 8th round, Foreman had slowed, and Ali stepped forward with a combination that knocked him out. Marco Antonio Barrera. For much of the 1990s, Marco Antonio Barrera built his reputation as one of the most aggressive fighters in the lower weight divisions. He pushed forward behind combinations and was willing to trade punches at close range, often turning fights into brawls. The approach meant Barrera absorbed a great deal of punishment. That style was on display in February 2000 when Barrera faced Erik Morales in the first fight of their rivalry. The bout became a relentless exchange of combinations and pressure from both fighters. After 12 rounds, Morales won a close decision. In the fights that followed, Barrera began to adjust his approach. Rather than forcing exchanges, he used his jab more consistently and focused on controlling distance before committing to combinations. The difference became clear in April 2001 when Barrera faced Prince Nassim Hamed for the featherweight championship in Las Vegas. Hamed entered the fight undefeated and known for his unpredictable offense. Barrera approached the bout with discipline and control, using his jab and timing to keep Hamed at range. Instead of chasing exchanges, he waited for openings and countered when Hamed attacked. Over 12 rounds, Barrera repeatedly beat Hamed to the punch and won a clear decision. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Before he became known for defensive control, Floyd Mayweather Jr. built his reputation as an aggressive, offensive fighter. Early in his career, he relied on speed, combinations, and accuracy to overwhelm opponents. Fighting under the nickname Pretty Boy, Mayweather often moved forward and threw quick combinations that produced knockdowns. He mainly used that style during his years at lightweight and super featherweight. In January 2001, he knocked Diego Corrales down multiple times before stopping him in the 10th round. And in June 2005, he dominated Arturo Gatti with sustained combinations before the fight was stopped after 6 rounds. Mayweather's hands had been prone to injury throughout his career, and throwing heavy combinations carried risks. A hand injury during his 2001 fight with Carlos Hernandez forced him to briefly place a glove on the canvas, the only knockdown of his professional career. As he moved into the welterweight division, the competition also became larger and more experienced, with opponents such as Oscar De La Hoya and Shane Mosley. Continuing to rely on aggressive offense against bigger fighters placed more strain on his hands and exposed him to greater risk of injury. By the mid-2000s, Mayweather's style had shifted toward defense and precision. Instead of pressing forward with combinations, he relied on timing and counterpunching. Using the shoulder roll defense often associated with the Philly shell, Mayweather deflected punches with his lead shoulder and gloves while waiting for openings to counter. The approach allowed him to control fights with minimal risk and land accurate single shots rather than combinations. As he defended titles at welterweight and pursued bigger purses, the emphasis on defense and efficiency became the defining feature of his style. Saul Canelo Alvarez. Early in his championship career, Saul Canelo Alvarez fought primarily as a counterpuncher. He often waited for opponents to initiate exchanges before responding with short combinations and hooks. That style allowed him to use timing and defensive awareness to land clean punches while minimizing risk. One example came in April 2013 when Canelo faced Austin Trout for the Unified Junior Middleweight Championship. Trout attempted to control the fight with movement and jabs, but Canelo spent much of the bout waiting for openings and responding with counters. Midway through the fight, Canelo dropped Trout with a counter left hand and went on to win a decision. As Canelo matured and faced stronger opponents, however, he gradually began changing how he controlled fights. Instead of remaining primarily on the back foot and countering, he began stepping forward more often and applying controlled pressure. Improved head movement allowed him to slip punches while moving into range, which created opportunities to land combinations to the body and head. By forcing opponents backward, Canelo could dictate the pace rather than waiting for openings. That adjustment was clear in September 2018 when Canelo faced Gennady Golovkin in their rematch for the middleweight championship. In their first fight, Golovkin had spent much of the bout pressing forward while Canelo moved and countered. In the rematch, Canelo fought differently, stepping toward Golovkin and meeting him in the center of the ring. Using head movement to avoid punches, he attacked with combinations and body shots while maintaining pressure. After 12 rounds, Canelo earned a majority decision, demonstrating the more forward, pressure-based style he had developed. Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield first gained recognition in the cruiserweight division with a fast, high-volume style built around speed and constant combinations. Fighting smaller opponents allowed Holyfield to maintain a relentless pace while moving around the ring and throwing frequent punches. That approach was visible in July 1986, when Holyfield fought Dwight Muhammad Qawi for the Cruiserweight Championship. The bout became a demanding 15-round fight, with Holyfield maintaining a high output of combinations while circling the ring. His ability to sustain that pace helped him win a close decision and establish himself as one of the leading fighters in the cruiserweight division. When Holyfield later moved to the heavyweight division, however, the size and strength of his opponents forced him to adjust his approach. Heavyweights were larger and more capable of controlling distance with jabs and clinches, which made the constant movement style he had used at cruiserweight more difficult to sustain. Instead of relying primarily on speed and volume, Holyfield increasingly fought at closer range and engaged opponents in physical exchanges. His ability to throw short combinations while standing his ground became a key part of his success against larger fighters. That version of Holyfield appeared in November 1992 when he defended the heavyweight championship against Riddick Bowe. Bowe's height and reach advantage forced Holyfield into repeated exchanges at close range, rather than the faster outside style he had used earlier in his career. Throughout the fight, Holyfield stood his ground and traded punches with the larger opponent, showing the inside fighting approach that defined much of his heavyweight career. Andre Ward. Andre Ward's early professional style resembled the disciplined boxing approach he had used to win the gold medal at the 2004 Olympic Games. He relied on positioning, timing, and defense to control opponents rather than getting into exchanges. Ward often stayed at mid-range and used his jab to disrupt rhythm while landing counters. That style was used in November 2009 when Ward faced Mikkel Kessler in the Super 6 World Boxing Classic. Kessler entered the fight as one of the favorites in the tournament, known for his jab and technical skill. Ward controlled the bout with movement and well-placed counters, eventually winning when the fight was stopped due to cuts. As Ward continued facing stronger opposition, however, his approach began to shift toward more physical inside control. Instead of relying primarily on outside boxing, Ward frequently closed distance and used clinches to disrupt opponents' offense. By tying up opponents and landing short punches during close exchanges, Ward could limit their rhythm while gradually wearing them down over the course of a fight. That more physical version of Ward became especially clear in June 2017 when he fought Sergey Kovalev in their rematch for the light heavyweight championship. Rather than staying at range for long stretches, Ward stepped inside and targeted Kovalev with short punches to the body. The sustained inside pressure gradually slowed Kovalev, and Ward finished the fight with a series of body shots that forced the referee to stop the bout. The performance demonstrated how Ward had evolved from an outside technician into a fighter who could control opponents through close-range pressure. Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford first emerged as a champion with a style built on movement and counterpunching. Early in his lightweight career, he often spent the opening rounds studying opponents and controlling distance rather than pressing forward immediately. Crawford's ability to switch between orthodox and southpaw stances helped him land counters from different angles while avoiding prolonged exchanges. That was clear in March 2014 when Crawford traveled to Scotland to challenge Ricky Burns for the lightweight championship. Fighting in Burns's home arena, Crawford spent much of the bout controlling distance and landing clean counters while limiting Burns's offense. Over 12 rounds, Crawford's accuracy and movement earned him a decision victory. As Crawford moved up in weight and faced stronger opponents, however, his approach became more aggressive once he identified a weakness in an opponent's defense. Instead of relying on outside boxing, Crawford pressed forward and attacked with combinations after reading his opponent's rhythm. His ability to switch stances became a way to create openings for offense rather than a defensive tool. The more aggressive version of Crawford appeared in August 2017 when he fought Julius Indongo to unify the junior welterweight titles. After studying Indongo's reactions early in the fight, Crawford began stepping forward and targeting the body. In the third round, Crawford landed a sharp left hand to the body that dropped Indongo to the canvas for the count. The performance demonstrated how Crawford's style had evolved to use an opponent's timing as an attack point. Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis's early professional style relied heavily on power and the ability to finish fights quickly. After winning the Olympic gold medal in 1988, Lewis turned professional and established himself as one of the hardest punchers in the heavyweight division. In many of his early fights, he pressed forward and looked to end bouts with combinations rather than controlling distance. He used that style in October 1992 when he fought Donovan "Razor" Ruddock in London. Ruddock was known as one of the most dangerous punchers in the division, but Lewis attacked aggressively from the opening rounds. He landed heavy combinations and stopped Ruddock in the second round. A loss 2 years later forced Lewis to reconsider that approach. In September 1994, he defended the WBC heavyweight title against Oliver McCall. Lewis entered the fight as the champion, but was caught by a right hand in the second round and knocked out. The defeat showed the risks of relying too much on punching power. A new style emphasizing distance control and the jab was used in March 1999 when Lewis fought Evander Holyfield for the undisputed heavyweight championship at Madison Square Garden. Instead of pressing forward, Lewis used his jab and reach advantage to control the pace of the fight. He kept Holyfield at distance while landing straight punches and limiting exchanges. Although the fight ended in a controversial draw, Lewis's jab-centered approach became the foundation of his later heavyweight title defenses. Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's early professional style relied heavily on speed, aggression, and constant forward pressure. Fighting in the lower weight classes, Pacquiao often attacked in rapid bursts, throwing wide punches and quick combinations while stepping directly toward opponents. That aggressive approach was clear in March 2005 when Pacquiao fought Erik Morales in their first bout. Pacquiao pressed forward for much of the fight and attempted to overwhelm Morales with speed and volume, but Morales was able to control distance and counter effectively. Morales won a decision, handing Pacquiao a defeat that exposed the risks of relying too heavily on straight-line pressure. Over time, Pacquiao began refining his offensive approach. Instead of attacking directly in front of opponents, he used footwork to create angles before throwing combinations. By stepping to the side after attacking, Pacquiao could avoid counters while maintaining pressure. This adjustment allowed him to keep his speed and aggression while reducing the number of clean punches he absorbed. That new version of Pacquiao appeared in July 2019 when he faced Keith Thurman for the WBA welterweight championship. Thurman entered the fight undefeated and nearly a decade younger, but Pacquiao used angles to disrupt his timing. Early in the fight, Pacquiao knocked Thurman down with a quick left hand, and throughout the bout, he stepped around Thurman after landing combinations. After 12 rounds, Pacquiao won a split decision, becoming welterweight champion again at 40 years old. Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin, often known as Triple G, first built his reputation as one of the most relentless pressure fighters in the middleweight division. His early title defenses were defined by constant forward movement and a willingness to exchange punches in order to break opponents down. Golovkin typically stepped forward behind his jab and forced opponents toward the ropes, where he could attack with combinations to the head and body. That style was clear in June 2013 when Golovkin defended his middleweight title against Matthew Macklin. Golovkin steadily pushed Macklin backward throughout the fight and applied pressure until he created an opening for a powerful left hook to the body that ended the bout in the third round. As Golovkin faced stronger opposition at the top of the middleweight division, however, his approach became more measured. Instead of forcing exchanges constantly, he relied more heavily on his jab to control distance and pace the fight. The jab allowed him to maintain pressure while limiting opportunities for opponents to counter. This adjustment helped Golovkin remain effective against larger and more mobile fighters who preferred to stay on the outside. The more patient version of Golovkin first appeared in March 2017 when he fought Daniel Jacobs in New York. Jacobs used movement and size to disrupt Golovkin's usual pressure, forcing him to fight at a slower pace. Golovkin relied on his jab to control distance and gradually accumulate points while choosing moments to attack. Although Jacobs was difficult to stop, Golovkin maintained control for most of the fight and won a competitive decision. Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk first established his reputation in the cruiserweight division with a style built on constant movement and high punch volume. Rather than relying on single power shots, Usyk controlled fights through footwork, angles, and steady combinations. He frequently circled the ring and attacked in bursts, forcing opponents to reset before they could respond. That style was seen in July 2018 when Usyk faced Murat Gassiev in the final of the World Boxing Super Series tournament. Gassiev entered the fight with significant knockout power, but Usyk controlled the pace with movement and accurate combinations. Over 12 rounds, Usyk repeatedly stepped around Gassiev and accumulated points while limiting exchanges at close range, winning a wide decision to become the undisputed cruiserweight champion. When Usyk moved to the heavyweight division, the size and strength of his opponents required adjustments. Heavyweights were capable of slowing the fight with clinches and physical pressure, which made the constant high-volume style he had used at cruiserweight harder to maintain. Instead of fighting at the same relentless pace, Usyk began emphasizing distance control and carefully timed attacks. He often used a long guard to measure range and disrupt incoming punches before stepping to new angles. His footwork remained central to his style, but he attacked in shorter bursts and then reset his position. The change became clear in September 2021 when Usyk challenged Anthony Joshua for the unified heavyweight championship. Rather than trying to overwhelm Joshua with combinations, Usyk controlled the fight through movement and positioning. He stepped around Joshua to create angles, landed precise combinations, and limited exchanges at close range. Over 12 rounds, Usyk disrupted Joshua's rhythm and won a decision to become heavyweight champion, demonstrating the more distance-focused style he had developed at heavyweight. Thanks for watching. Check out the links in the description to shop for pro boxing gear.
home.